The angry mob has come out in full force for Danielle Smith after her decision in order to protect our children. How's that going for her? Let's get into it.
Oh, yeah!
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to The Fringe. Danielle Smith has been on the mouths and discussion tables of everyone since her announcement last week in order to rewrite the rules when it comes to gender reassignment surgery for children, puberty blockers for children, medical treatments for children, pronouns for children. There was a video we covered last week on that. You guys should go check it out because YouTube buried it in the algorithm. I know multiple people who reached out to me who said they weren't given a notification, they weren't told about it, and despite other channels covering this subject, this one seemed to get very little push when it came to putting that out. So I know most of you haven't seen it. I would recommend going to check it out if by any means you're not 100% familiar with what Danielle Smith proposed for the province. But we're going to get into some of that. As it turns out, the angry leftist mob that, and I say leftist because left seems to be the new definition. Like left-leaning used to mean you were more discreet on your politics. You liked things more closed off. You liked lower taxes, and better policy from your representatives. But nowadays, the left usually means that you're bonkers, Yahoo crazy, unreasonable, and that you have your head in the clouds. I hate using those terms. But anytime we discuss the left, that seems to be where it comes from. Now, over the weekend, protests all over the province. There was one in Edmonton where Napoleon Dynamite, Janice Irwin, wanted to stand her ground. And of course, in Calgary, Rebel News posting, protesters gather at Calgary City Hall to stand against new legislation from Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, which puts restrictions on youth gender reassignment and transgender athletes in the province. Now, one thing we didn't talk about in that video is the new rules for transgender athletes competing, say, a transgender woman competing in women's sports. Danielle Smith had simply said that there were going to be new leagues put forward where only biological women could compete in women's sports, and then there would be a separate league for transgendered women who want to compete in sports, because let's be honest, there is a definite advantage when it comes to those things, and that's why these transgender women who haven't even changed their appearance are competing in these sports. It's an easy win. It's an easy way to get their names on the record books. If you haven't seen the Daily Wire's newest movie, Lady Ballers, it's basically drawn out in that movie as to how that works. But of course, former failed Calgary Mayor Naheed Nenshit was also there to deliver his speech. And he really lays it on thick, because now with Rachel Notley stepping down from the NDP party in Alberta, there's speculative rumor that Nenshi is going to vie for that position. And I fear that if he were to get that position, that puts the NDP party back in a half-decent state to run against Danielle Smith in the next election 3 years from now for the province. But let's hear what went down at City Hall while all these people who support child abuse were standing outside voicing their concerns.
It's much worse. It's erasure. It's suppression. It's oppression, and it's wrong.
For the last 2 weeks or so, since I heard the news that we would be hearing a policy on parental rights coming from the provincial government, I have had a knot in my gut, in the pit of my stomach. And on Wednesday, when I saw that video posted.
So it doesn't show the whole speech from Nenshi there, but of course he says he has knots in his stomach about Danielle's newest rules on the province. Now, if you know anything, and again, we're going to get into what those rules were, what those new conditions are, which ultimately are protecting children from doing something to their bodies that can cause them irreparable harm. We're talking about child abuse. I know multiple people in the gay community that don't agree with puberty blockers. They don't agree with gender altering surgeries. They believe the same as I do, that this is a mental illness, that this is something, gender dysphoria is a mental illness that needs to be addressed, rather than enabling people to have those views on their personal bodies. They're essentially castrating and ruining their bodies to make a statement, which seems to be a trend nowadays. Now, there were people 20, 30 years ago that talked about going as radical as to do these kind of surgeries. But in the last few years, it has ramped up significantly. And the clown crew, that I call them, are now out in full force saying everyone should be doing this. They should be talking to our children in school about these things. They should be encouraging this kind of behavior amongst youth because, well, it's ultimately the plan of them to just demote, the population. It's population control. And it's child abuse. This liberal government and left-leaning governments like the NDP are out of control. And as we go further down my list here of saved videos, Marcia Ian, Marcy Ian, if you remember her, she used to be on CTV, or I think it was Canada AM back in the day when she was with CTV. And now she's a Liberal MP. She blocked me on Twitter last week, and I'll get into that, because she says Trudeau's Minister for Women and Gender Equality and Youth, Marcy Ian, says Trudeau cabinet ministers spent the night and into the morning consoling kids after Alberta unveiled its parental right policy. Could you give me a more sad sob story? I mean, we've seen this behavior when Tucker Carlson came to Calgary a few weeks ago with the Stephen Guilbeault and the sad dog face, and they talked about us and they made us look terrible, consoling kids into the wee hours of the morning. So Marcy Ian, of course, I tweeted her back and said, so am I to believe that you'll be giving these puberty blockers and gender reassignments to your children, Marcy? Of course, that offended her, and she blocked me because, let's face it, folks, Justin Trudeau's not going to do this to his kids. Marcy Ian's not going to do this to her kids or encourage it. They want you to do it to your kids. They want their hands on your kids' brains. This isn't about what's best for people. This is about control. This is about sick visions of what the world needs to look like. And look no further. Good friend of the channel, Jamie Soleil, posting here, Justin Castro's health minister approves giving fentanyl to children. We've talked about this in British Columbia. But listen to this.
Giving very potent opioids to children, of which the Canada.ca website says very clearly a few grains can kill you. Is that appropriate?
So, Mr. Chair, my colleague did ask this question before, and I believe we've already tabled all the proofs on safer supply, and I'll be happy to table them again for further reference.
That's not the question, Minister. My question is do you think you should be giving an incredibly potent synthetic opioid, of which a few grains can kill you, to children? Yes or no? Simple.
Each physician works with their patient on the treatment protocols that work best for them. That is a very unique and important relationship.
Thank you.
So she gives a typical question period style answer. Well, I'm not going to come out and say yes because I could be held criminally liable for killing and murdering children. It's so sad and pathetic that this is where we are in the world. That I've said a million times over, keep your hands off our kids. Children get one opportunity to be children. And you've got these Looney Tunes squadrons of people, including Naheed Nenshi, now vying for leadership positions on the basis that, hey, we should be able to do these things to your kids. We should be able to give hard, addictive drugs to your children. We should be allowed to convince your children to castrate themselves. We should be allowed to convince children to take puberty blockers and ruin their bodies, and convince them that they're phobic if they don't do these things. We should talk to them about identity because that's the most important thing. We wouldn't want kids to know how to pay bills or do a basic math or learn history, which they try to hide and erase, I might add. No, they don't need basic life skills. They need to know how they identify. They need to know how they see the world. Well, one of the wicked witches of the WEF, Rachel Notley, I'm surprised Chrystia Freeland didn't join her. She accuses Danielle Smith of basing trans surgery ban on kids as misinformation. There's that lovely word they like to use. This is the same as lockdowns. This is the same as the coof, where it's we're going to use these usual tag words to raise everybody's rage levels beyond comprehension, so that they're on our side. So we go, oh, it's all misinformation, disinformation. I really wish more politicians were like Pierre, where they'd start saying, how is it misinformation? How is it misinformation? Please explain it to me. Please explain to me what's good. Is Rachel Notley doing this to her children? Is Rachel Notley giving her kids puberty blockers and telling them to reaffirm their genders? I don't think so. I'm sure her husband, who runs QP and all the health unions, certainly isn't encouraging his children to alter their bodies. Now, of course, Rachel Notley's on her way out, but she still wants to stand here and give her 2 cents. Alberta NDP leader Rachel Notley says the Alberta government's proposed politics, gender ideology, and parents' rights are based on misinformation, because why should parents have any rights over what their children are doing? Premier Danielle Smith announced a suite of policies Wednesday, which supporters say represents a thoughtful and necessary approach to preserving children's rights while addressing concerns about irreversible decisions related to biological sex. Good old W. Brett Wilson chiming in, Danielle Smith ready and willing to duke it out on parental rights. Outstanding work by a truly thoughtful and caring political leader. I said the same thing. It's about bloody time. Somebody stands up and somebody says something. Look, I've said it a million times over that I don't care how you view your body, what you do in your home, in the privacy of your home. That's your decision. That's your prerogative. That's how you feel. But just because you feel a certain way doesn't mean the rest of the world needs to as well. I like having pizza on the weekends with my family. We make it a tradition. I know you can tell by my lovely puckish exterior that, that I typically do those kinds of things. But it's a tradition in our house. But just because I do it doesn't mean I'm going to start saying on my YouTube channel, hey, every single one of you that doesn't do it is a terrible human being. Do what works for you. Live your life. And leave the kids alone. It's bad enough that kids were locked in their homes for multiple years, that they're lacking a lot of social skills, that they're lacking the ability to communicate with other kids. My daughter's going to be 10 years old in August, and she still hasn't had her first sleepover with a bunch of friends because parents are still on edge about, oh, do we let them get together in large groups? It's terrible. When I was my daughter's age, I was out every weekend with my friends. I was wanting to go to the movies. I was begging my parents to allow me to go on my own on a bus to the mall with my friends by the age of 9. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that they let me do those things, but I was always a socialite. Kids don't have that today. In a video, Smith unveiled a series of policy changes covering youth privacy in schools, to which she said that any kid wanting to voice their pronouns, parents must be informed. She put rules on sex education, which, again, another reporter tried to get her on a gotcha, saying, like, don't you think it's important teachers are talking about these things? To which Danielle Smith replied, if teachers' focuses are to talk to kids about sex every day, then it's a good thing we stepped in with these regulations, and I can't agree more. She's basically said that you're not allowed to take puberty blockers or any kind of reaffirming surgery until you're over 17, when you're an adult. Just like tattoos, just like alcohol, just like cigarettes. Anything. Contraband. You have to wait until you're an adult. I mean, my father caught me sneaking my friend's older brother's Playboy magazines when I was a kid. Like, not a kid, but like an early teen. Does that mean he should have taken me to the strip club and said, well, you're interested? Let's take you out. Let's get you initiated. That's not how it works. Rachel Notley quotes here that Danielle Smith's policy represents government interference in what should be a collaborative and private decision between parents, their child, and their doctor. She's got it right. It should only involve parents, their child, and their doctor. Not the schools, not the government. One thing that the government seems to not realize in this whole situation, and the one theme that keeps on going here, is they think they have the right to tell you what's best for you. This isn't 1984. This is the real world. We get to decide what we put in our bodies. We get to decide what we do to our bodies, not the government. Keep in mind, a lot of people have very perverse visions on what abortion should be, while also supporting mutilating bodies. Smith defended the changes in a press conference Thursday, doubling down on her commitment to protect children. We want to make sure that kids know the consequences that it's going to have on their life and that they're mature enough to be able to make those decisions and live with the consequences. And they are adult decisions, so we want to make sure that certain decisions are made as adults, said Danielle Smith. The whole point, really, at the end of the day, folks, is moot. Any politician, any celebrity, any public figure who's coming out and telling you you shouldn't have rights as a parent to know what your kid is doing, you shouldn't have the right to be informed when they're making decisions that affect their lives, those people are either protecting PDF files, as we've said on this channel, or they're enablers at this point. They're merely enablers. The question that we should all be asking, the old trick question of what is a woman? I think the trick question we should be asking each and every one of these politicians, will you be planning on doing this with your children? Will you be planning on giving these medications to your kids? The answer every time will be no. Certainly not. Because why would they do that? They know darn well what it gets to. But ladies and gentlemen, let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Again, if you like this video, make sure to put a thumbs up on the video, comment, share, do all the usual YouTube stuff. Again, hopefully this video doesn't get as buried as the first one where we covered it. I think this is a very important issue. It's one that I firmly stand behind in my run for mayor of Calgary. I can assure you I would be taking a stance just the same as Danielle Smith's, that this stuff has no place for government. That rules are rules. You have to be an adult. That's how this works. Let me know your thoughts down below. If it's your first time here, I hope this video has earned your subscription. As you're hitting that, don't forget to hit the bell for notifications and join us this Friday. That's right, our live streams have changed. Friday Night Fringe now happens every Friday at 6 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Mountain, 8 p.m. Central, where we sit down and talk about everything that happened over the week, topics that have dropped over the week, as well as everything that's going to be coming up in the week ahead. I hope you guys join me there. I look forward to seeing each and every one of you there for Friday Night Fringe. I hope you have a great rest of your week. I'll catch you on the next one.